Now, the international break might be coming up this weekend. However, it doesn't mean we can't get ahead with our planning for game week 4. And in today's video, I'm going to go through my top teams to target and, of course, my top players you should be looking to bring in for match day 4. Now, before we dive into today's video, I just want to say that we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it would be absolutely amazing if we could go and do that. So if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Right, let's start off, as I always do with these transfer targets videos, looking ahead to game week 4 with the goals and clean sheet odds coming from Fantasy Football Hub. Obviously, if you want to go and check out their amazing website, a link to that in the description. They are still currently running their 50% off sale as well, so go and take full advantage of that to get the best head start this season. Right, I think kind of looking at it in terms of fixtures we want to be targeting, obviously Manchester City against Brentford, home fixture for City, probably a decent captaincy shout with Erling Haaland there. Liverpool against Forest as well. You know, Mohamed Salah, people are looking at bringing him in, obviously swapping him out for Bukayo Saka with two on paper difficult fixtures coming up for Arsenal, obviously Spurs, and then of course the week after they face Manchester City. So that is a plan that some people are obviously looking at as well. If they do have Saka, they're trying to find the funds to go and get Mohamed Salah, and I think that's a great shout as well. Chelsea as well, up there for projected goals, and I think that could be a very, very decent shout as well. In terms of clean sheets, it is back in Manchester City, Liverpool, and Brighton as well, but there's some very, very tasty clashes in there, to be honest. Obviously the ones for our kind of captaincy and players we want to be looking to bring in, definitely that Brighton fixture we're going to be targeting. Liverpool we're going to be looking at as well, with a great fixture run coming up for them and a great fixture in match day 4. Same goes for Manchester City as well. Obviously they do face Arsenal in 5, but after that, again, a really, really great set of fixtures coming up for them. Right, let's move on to data from 11ify. Again, if you want to go and check out their amazing website as well, it is in the description. And as you can see down the bottom, to see more data like this, it is completely free over on 11ify's website. Again, link to their amazing stuff in the description. Right. Here we have the next 5 match days for clean sheet odds. So if you are obviously looking for a defender to go and target this week, I definitely think for me, my top picks would be Liverpool. As you can see, a 42% chance of a clean sheet, the highest on this list as well, as we saw from the Fantasy Football Hub data as well, also back to do quite well. And then match day 5, match day 6, and even match day 7, all above that 30% mark as well. So very, very good investments into those Liverpool defenders. Could be a very, very shrewd move to do. Arsenal and City, obviously they have their game against each other in match day 5, so it does obviously put it off a little bit there. However, 6, 7 and 8 are pretty decent for both sides as well, and definitely worth some consideration for some of their players. Aston Villa, they did concede today, however their good fixture run does continue, and also their clean sheet odds do continue as well, so definitely worth a little bit of investment there. We haven't seen how Chelsea have got on so far this weekend, but again, some pretty decent clean sheet odds for them coming up, so again, a team I think I would potentially be looking to consider. Obviously the big standouts for the next 2 match days as well are going to be Brighton, a 37 and a 33% chance of a clean sheet. The likes of Lewis Dunk definitely starting to enter people's thought processes for this upcoming game week. Moving on to projected goals. Again, if we're looking for attackers, this is kind of the data that I usually start off with, and then go on to, you know, build, kind of look at players and look at individual player data as well. Starting off, as we can see, Liverpool over the next few weeks are one of the best teams for projected goals along that period. That is why I'm suggesting, you know, Mohamed Salah is definitely going to be on a lot of people's shopping lists for upcoming game weeks. It is a big split between him and Haaland for captaincy for next week as well, so that also goes down to a big debate as well. Arsenal, for me, the likes of Saka are probably going to struggle over the next 2, you would imagine, looking at these projected goal numbers. However, it picks up massively for 6, 7 and 8 as well, respectively. Aston Villa is pretty decent across the next run as well. However, we will be talking about some of their players in the video a little bit later and what to do with them. And then Chelsea are also on this list as well, but for me personally, I think unless it's Palmer, I'm not going to touch them with a barge pole. And again, we will kind of delve a little bit more into that over the next few as well. Interestingly, a team that I haven't really spoken about in too much depth is obviously Manchester United. Theirs do pick up, and the way that Southampton have started the season, the people that did stick with Bruno Fernandes or maybe have stuck around Garnacho could be rewarded next week. 1.82 on here. However, we saw in the last section it was a little bit higher as well from the Fantasy Football Hub data. And interestingly, when the Rob T FPL betting data comes out as well, well, I think United could be quite high for projected goals this week. So maybe if you've got Bruno Fernandes or Garnacho, it could be worth giving them game week 4 because Southampton haven't looked great over the opening 3 game weeks. Obviously, Brighton as well are a team we are going to be taking a look at for the next few fixtures. Game week 4 and game week 5 are brilliant, but also game week 7 as well is looking pretty good for the projected goals. And as we'll come on to see with some of their players, there could be some real gems in there that could definitely help your rank. Obviously, like I said, if you want to go and check out Fantasy Football Hub or 11ify, both links will be in the description. But let's move on to some players. Moving on, one of the teams that did obviously look good for projected goals in both of the models we just saw in the last section was Brighton. They are currently unbeaten in the Premier League. Probably a little bit fortunate today. Saka did have a few big opportunities, and if he'd have scored those, could have been a completely different game. Obviously, the controversial yellow as well for Declan Rice definitely had an impact on that game, but they have been impressive over the opening 3 fixtures. They've got 2 nice home fixtures back-to-back. Their longer-term fixtures are a little bit more sketchy. They play Tottenham and then Newcastle. They're not the worst fixtures in the world, kind of off the back of some of the performances we've seen from these sides so far this season. However, it is those next 2 where I feel a lot of people are going to be licking their lips and definitely looking for some saucy players to go and pick up. Now, the obvious one, of course, is going to be João Pedro. 2 goal involvements for him. Looks like he is the main man as well. Kind of, on penalties. I think as well his minutes are a little bit more secure than Danny Welbeck. As you can see, he has better goal involvement and better expected goal involvement over the opening 3 game weeks. However, I feel with Evan Ferguson starting to get himself back up to fitness, we will see him start to play in that number 9 role. And obviously, João Pedro has been playing a little bit further back in that 10, and I do feel he is a little bit more settled. However, what we are seeing with this new manager compared to De Zerbi is a lot less starting rotation. Now, maybe that does develop as the season progresses, but we are seeing a more settled and structured side rather than one that is constantly changing week in, week out, which I definitely think did impact De Zerbi and obviously our impact as well in terms of looking for FPL assets. It seems like it's a lot more settled side. So if you wanted to go for Welbeck or João Pedro, I think I would favour João Pedro. As you can see, the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points model as well is also favouring João Pedro as the better pick to go for over those next 3 game weeks. I think with penalties as well, it is just that slight impact, and I feel with, obviously, like I said, Ferguson coming back at some point, I think Welbeck's minutes could start to look a little bit dicey. I think for those people as well that did go for, obviously, Muniz, Chris Wood's fixtures are starting to fail as well. Those, could be a nice 2 replacements there potentially lined up for you in João Pedro and Danny Welbeck. Moving on to the defence, again, as we saw with the 11ify data, the clean sheet data was pretty good for the next 2 and in game week 7 as well for Brighton. So Lewis Dunk, if you are in the market for a 4.5 million defender, could be a very, very decent shout. We know what he's capable of. We know he's been around the Premier League, sometimes pops up with the odd corner goal as well. So maybe something to consider with that one. Looking at the 2 midfielders, we've got Minter and we've got Matoma. Both have started all 3 games for Brighton, and as you can see, have been doing quite well in terms of expected goal involvement and their goal involvement on the pitch. Now, there is obviously the price point to talk about. There is 1 million difference between the pair, and so far, looking at the data, there isn't anything to kind of really split them. You would say, obviously Matoma is contributing more in terms of the expected goal involvement. However, from an eye test perspective, I think both are doing exceptionally well, and I feel you could be fortunate going either way. I would say, though, if you are somebody that looks at predicted points and uses that as obviously your decision-making tool, it does have Matoma slightly edging Minter. However, is it worth that extra million? Probably not, in my opinion. So if you are in the market for a cheaper midfielder, the Matoma or the Minter, I think I would slightly favour Minter. However, we've seen in previous seasons what Matoma is definitely capable of when he's fully fit, when the fixtures are right, and when he is firing. So it would not surprise me to see him go and pick up a few attacking returns across this good fixture run as well. Those were the Brighton players. Like I said, there's definitely some interesting picks in here. For me, the top ones are going to be João Pedro, Minter, and Matoma. I think Welbeck, probably a little bit too much of a rotation risk for me, in my personal opinion. And Lewis Dunk, I don't really think, unless you're absolutely desperate, I would be looking to bring in a Brighton defender. However, they have been impressive over the opening 3 game weeks of the season. So let me know what assets you're thinking about potentially bringing in from Brighton for game week 4. Moving on to two lads we did outline in last week's video. It is Wissa and it is Mbuemo. We spoke about them being great options for game week 3 with a strong fixture against Southampton. The data from Fantasy Football Hub, 11FI, Rob T, FPL was all suggesting a very, very strong Brentford win with a couple of goals as well. It was also suggesting maybe a clean sheet, but that obviously did fall away right at the death. So if you did have Flecken, I do feel for you on that one. However, the two lads that did perform were Wissa and obviously Mbuemo as well. I feel people are going to be licking their lips looking at this young man and thinking, how can I get him in my team? Well, the next two fixtures on paper are very, very difficult. Now, Manchester City still do look a little bit fragile and still conceding very, very sloppy goals. So maybe you could get something out of it. However, I think the strategy for me is wait until game week 5 or game week 6. Definitely Spurs are still a team to be targeting. However, with it being away from home, I do feel a little bit less kind of positive around Brentford assets and their chances of getting anything out of that game in general. So game week 6 is probably going to be the period where I think we should be looking to pick them up. They'll have back-to-back home games with West Ham, Wolves, then they've got United, Ipswich and Fulham as a run. It's a really, really good run. This obviously as well with Ivan Toney now have departed the club. I think it makes these two pretty much nailed every single week. Now, Wissa is in there as probably the cheap Muniz replacement, or, you know, maybe you're not fancying Chris Wood's fixtures for the next few, with them starting to get a little bit more difficult for Nottingham Forest. However, he is continuing to deliver and continuing to score goals, so maybe just worth keeping him. However, the people that are obviously on Muniz, you could go this week, but you will be facing a very, very difficult opponent in Manchester City. However, I think if you waited up until game week 6 and maybe prioritised other transfers, maybe give Muniz one last shot, it could be Wissa time around game week 6. However, the key man I am aiming to get into my side as a replacement for Anthony Gordon around game week 6, of course, is going to be Brighton Mbuemo. 2 goals for him today. He also now will be the penalty taker, and a very good penalty taker at that, now that Ivan Toney has departed the club, and I think that makes him a valuable asset at 7 million. He is a key talisman. He knows how to score goals. If he gets the penalties as well, he is a fantastic and wonderful player to pick it up. Obviously, if you went for him off the back of my advice for last week, fair play. Like I said, obviously just make sure you've got some rotating players around, obviously 4 and 5. However, if you did go for it, fair play. I hope you're reaping the rewards right now. But let's move on to another player I thought was really, really good this week, and, you know, has been on the radar. Let's put it that way. He's been on the radar over the past few weeks. It is going to be Leif Davis. Now, you might be thinking to me, Tom, again, why are we going for Ipswich defenders? Why am I paying any more than 4 million? Very valid. This guy has the Alfie Doherty feel to me, to be honest. Now, the data hasn't been exceptional. He has managed just to pick up 1 assist so far. However, if you look at some other stats that are obviously, you know, very, very good and encouraging, no Ipswich player in that Liverpool game, the first game of the season, had more touches in the opposition's half than him. Again, he's a left back. They've now got this pretty good run, you'd say, as well. Bar maybe Brighton and Villa, not the easiest of fixtures. However, Villa aren't looking the same fluid side they did. Brighton, again, maybe something shocks them there. However, Southampton look absolutely woeful over the opening 3. And if Ipswich have any chance of staying up, they need something out of that game. West Ham away, again, still a little bit unpredictable on that one. And then Everton capitulating today in the way that they did. Again, I think Ipswich would be looking to target that one. So again, if you're looking for a player that, you know, can rotate in and around this side, maybe you're looking at somebody like Lewis Dunk or Leif Davis, or, you know, you need another 4.5 million defender, or maybe you're on a wild card this week. I think he could be a decent pickup if you can find maybe some rotation around the more difficult fixtures for Ipswich. However, I wouldn't be banking on clean sheets. As we saw from the 11FI data, he is very, very low down for those clean sheets. However, it is those attacking returns, very similar to Alfie Doherty, that I feel could pull him out, and we could maybe get some value out of him. But let me know what you think about Leif Davis down in the comment section. Has he potentially crossed your mind, or do you think I'm being a little bit deluded on this one? Moving on to some players I think you should be looking to avoid over the next few weeks. Obviously, Chelsea have got a pretty amazing fixture run. Again, they were quite high up on the 11FI data as well for, you know, teams for goals and clean sheets. But what I wanted to highlight here is the extent of talent they have within those forward areas, and why anybody outside of Cole Palmer, for me, is not worth any sort of looking or any justification for buying them. I know Madueke was one of the top players that people were looking at. However, it is just that plethora of quality and talent. We've already seen it with Nkunku, who's not even featured on this obviously graphic as well from TNT Sports, and I think it just highlights the quality and depth they've got. So my advice for you guys would be, obviously, if they smash it tomorrow afternoon, I would say anybody outside of Cole Palmer, I just would not consider. There is too much risk and too much rotation. You know how I feel about that one, and probably not worth looking at in general as well outside of Cole Palmer. So very easy one on that one. Moving on to a player that I feel was on people's shopping lists this week, and it is Ollie Watkins. Now, he did pick up an assist in the game against Leicester. I actually thought it came off Ramsey, but it didn't. It must have hit Watkins along the way somewhere. However, as we can see, these are not points of a 9 million player. They're just not. And also, the other thing that's going with him is some of the comments coming from Emery around his potential fitness and whether or not, you know, he is going to be able to play full 90s after dealing with some injury issues after the Euros. And then as well, he's coming off in the 60th minute for Duran, who again scored today off the bench. Like, that's 2 games as well out of the opening 3 where Duran has come off the bench and scored. It would not surprise me to see that maybe in the next game or maybe the game after, if Watkins again doesn't continue to perform, he might just throw Duran in. Again, we've also got Champions League rotation starting around match day 4. Again, that might be further highlighting that Duran is going to start over Ollie Watkins. Yes, the fixtures are absolutely stupendous. Everton, Wolves and Ipswich as the next 3 is fantastic. However, when we are paying 9 million for an asset, it is not worth going for them when they are seeing 60 minutes. They've got a quality competitor sat on the bench who is scoring, is in form, and Watkins as well doesn't look like the same player he was last season. He's really, really struggling, to be honest, to kind of, you know, take the big opportunities, whereas last year he would have absolutely buried them. He had 1 against Arsenal, had 1 against Leicester as well today. So for me personally, I think he is an avoid for right now. We need to see more steady and secure minutes, or maybe some comments from Emery that definitely support that case. However, with the early substitutions, and I feel with him not taking the big opportunities he's getting so far, it is an avoid for me and is not justifying that 9 million price point at the moment. And finishing up, as we always do with our transfer targets video, it is going to be the hub predictor tool for the next 5 game weeks, taking a look at where it thinks, you know, certain players are going to do extremely well and which players may be worth targeting over the next few weeks. As we can see, Mohamed Salah and Haaland leading the way. I said basically when we looked at the 11FI data, Liverpool's projected goals are slightly outweighing, obviously, Erling Haaland and Manchester City over the next few weeks. However, there's still some great fixtures and some great opportunities to obviously be giving Erling Haaland the captain as well. And he is a guy who just continues to score and continues to do exceptionally well in the game. It's just what he is. He's just an absolute beast, and I think every week represents a pretty steady captaincy option, to be honest, as well. Saka and Palmer are both in there. Again, we did see that with the 11FI data. There are more projected goals coming up for both of these sides over the next 5 game weeks as well. Though those fixtures after game week 6 as well for Saka and Arsenal, I think he represents a great captain option in 6 and 7, to be honest. Palmer as well, some great fixtures coming up for Chelsea, so it makes complete sense why he is kind of towards the elevated heights, if you like, of this list as well. We can also see Mbuemo, who is starting to creep onto this list as well. We've obviously spoke about him and talked about him in length for this video, but I find it interesting as well that the, you know, Fantasy Football Hub model is starting to see his worth as well. Same goes for João Pedro. 2 great fixtures coming up for Brighton over the next few. Again, a very, very interesting player to be taking a look at over the next few weeks. We saw with the Liverpool clean sheet data, it probably is one of the best on this list. And it is interesting that they've actually excluded Trent Alexander-Arnold from making it here. However, Andy Robertson, a player we've not really spoken about and not too many people are speaking about in the community as well, makes it onto this list, so could be worth a little bit of consideration. Some strong defensive data coming up for Liverpool as well, some pretty handy home games as well, and I think from the eye test as well, has definitely looked like a player that could be worthwhile picking up over the next few weeks. Same goes with Kai Havertz as well. I am targeting to go and get him in match day 6, of course, for Alexander Isak, with those, you know, good fixtures, good projected goals as well. That all seems to kind of marry up to me as well as a perfect strategy. Let me know what you think of today's video and today's transfer targets down in the comment section below. If you've got any questions about your team or any questions in general, please let me know and I'll try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And like I said, we are on our way to 10,000 subscribers on the FPL Tom YouTube channel. If you want to become part of that journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 4.